Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today about our project for the National Automotive Innovation Center. The building is also known as the Lord Bhattacharya Building. Lord Bhattacharya sadly passed away about 18 months ago. But he was the founder of the Warwick Manufacturing Group and a champion for many projects at the university, and including this. He did live to see it finish, but died shortly before the building opened. However, National Automotive Innovation Center is a bit of a mouthful, so I call it the NAIC. And everybody who's ever worked on it calls it the NAIC, and I think people at the university call it that as well. So I'm going to call it the NAIC as we go forward. So just to give you a bit of overview about the project, the NAIC is driving the future of the automotive industry from the heart of the United Kingdom. It's a beacon for automotive research. It brings together the brightest minds from industry and academia to develop new approaches to smarter, lighter, greener transport and deliver the skills required to keep the UK globally competitive. NAIC is a partnership between Warwick Manufacturing Group at the University of Warwick, Jaguar Land Rover, and Tata Motors UK, with funding from these partners and the UK's government's Higher Education Funding Council. The client partnership brief was to create a collaborative environment for their research groups that would have the time from idea to production. The 33,000 square meter building is the largest research center of its kind in Europe, and it's home to 1,000 staff working across design, engineering, and research, as well as future engineers on degree programs. So I wanted to just focus on 7 key points today. The building, we worked on it for over 10 years. With a cast of thousands, really, including everybody at Cullinan Studio, the contractors team, the other engineers at Arup, and so forth. So it's a long story to tell, but I'm going to try and keep it focused on these 7 points, which are about how we consulted with the end users of the building and our response to that. So the first one is understanding the culture. It's fundamental to build a relationship of mutual trust where anyone participating in the engagement process can contribute ideas or challenge others. And we find when we meet with all the variety of people, and there was over 100 people consulted for the briefing process of this, that change can be scary. Some people can feel threatened or suspicious if they're not in the sort of management or steering group. And we found some views that surprised us. One of those being talking to the engineers, who were mostly men, there were some women. They were really worried that we were going to impose a kind of crazy Google type office where everything's provided for you, provided you never go home and you work all hours of the day there. And others saying they'd actually prefer to work in a 1970s style cubicle where they didn't have to interact with anyone and they could just focus on what they were trying to achieve. So I think what we learned from this was the cohort of people working in the building and the kind of culture of the industry was they want to work really hard and effectively together, but they want to go home at the end of the day. So everything about the building we knew needed to kind of fulfill those needs. But alongside having a very kind of empathetic antennae in all these consultation meetings is a very practical process of mapping out the briefing. So because we had so many people from different organizations and different departments doing different types of activities in the building, we developed a methodology which included individual interviews, peer group workshops, getting them to do creative tasks, building visits, super important, and even town hall presentations where anybody who might not have been in the briefing process could come along to a big presentation in the lecture hall and tell us what they think. And that usually was followed up by lots of emails as well with sometimes quite tough questions, but all of that really helped us to kind of hone the design. I'm just going to go through a few slides which kind of showed what the issues were that we observed when we were doing the consultation with them. And these are images of the existing workspaces, I think for Jaguar Land Rover, in spaces they were working at the university. So you can see the desk layouts were very cluttered. There's nothing kind of groundbreaking about that. Noisy, wrong kind of storage. But, people also saying, there's a buzz about the place and they liked that. So they wouldn't want to lose that completely. Meeting spaces are super important for them, but also places for pinning up. They talked about a never-ending whiteboard being something they would like, having components nearby that they'd be working with. A lot of people had these sort of Heath Robinson type situations next to their desk of small electronics and tinkering, and then actually quite substantial sort of tinkering setups in like closets next to open plan desk spaces, which actually kind of contravened some health and safety issues. But it was really important to them to blur the lines between a conventional office type desk and the sort of workshop areas that they needed to use to advance their work. And then there's also the other social side of it, and different parts of different organizations were better at this than others, but there definitely was a really great culture of pizza parties, samosa parties, and they wanted that kind of space. They had these high white tables in one of their existing buildings, and they said they wanted to keep something like that in the new building where they could get together easily, either for social reasons or for quick informal meetings. And JLR in particular had an annual egg race every year, and that they said this was a dangerous thing for them because once they gave the brief out to the employees, they'd spend all their time thinking about this. They'd make some sort of contraption, engineering contraption, and they had to, transport an egg across space. Sometimes they had to do weird things like be able to crack it and fry it and all sorts of things, and then return, and there was a race to do that. So that was an annual event. They needed space for that to happen. And meanwhile, there's all sorts of specialist space in the building, from clay modeling, dynamometers, design studios, engineering hall that needed absolute precision, attention to detail and briefing. And quite importantly, the need to protect intellectual property meant there was a deeply embedded culture of secrecy. However, that was also seen to potentially hinder collaboration. So second point was make space work harder. This project actually started out as 2 buildings. And then over the development, working with the partners, they could see the value of working under one roof, but they still wanted all their kind of private spaces. And we, through testing ideas and demonstrating to them that actually you could share a lot of the space, and that would foster collaboration and innovation while keeping the minimum of the kind of private, secure spaces. So what this led to was a building organized around a collaborative hub, and that's this kind of dark orange space, but it also includes some of these kind of foyer yellow spaces. And it's a building over 4 floors, and it's got a very dramatic staircase that leads you up to the main car showroom. And there's actually an outdoor terrace for viewing vehicles up there as well. And then all the engineering spaces, and that includes engineering hall, design studios, virtual reality suites, clay modeling, paint shops are organized around the sort of northeast, and research offices, all the kind of people spaces organized around the southwest of the building. So this view kind of shows, imagine all the office spaces taken off the front here. This shows the collaborative spaces of the building over 4 floors with those specialist engineering spaces behind it. And you can see we've got a frontage to the south here, which is populated by a cafe that's used by the whole university, a foyer with many uses. I'll talk about that in a bit later. There's exhibition spaces and student exhibition spaces. And then we've got outdoor terraces facing south and west on the building. So another key point is make room for nature. This is a fundamental philosophy at Cullinan Studio, and we think we're experts at integrating nature. We had to do that within the university campus. And as I said, we've worked here for over 30 years. We're used to engaging with the master plan for the campus, but we knew when we started this project, it was an opportunity to solve some long-standing problems on the campus. And that was, links between key parts of the campus, this academic area here and the university house, while also creating a front door to the campus. So we wanted to make an entrance that was welcoming, green, and also had outdoor spaces that people could enjoy, and bring more nature into the campus. I think if anyone had used that campus, if any of you listening had used it, you could see that it was very much car focused, car parking garages. And if you were a pedestrian, the routes weren't that legible and not that pleasant to use. You really felt you were on narrow sidewalks with traffic moving past you. The new building really changes that. It's a really significant change to the campus master plan. And here it is completed. So you can see we've got quite a wide route with new landscape, water feature, and a south-facing terrace outside the cafe. And just again to show you that there are roof terraces that we've designed as well for anybody in the building to get up at a higher level and use that for outdoor meetings and relaxation. Another point, use timber where we can. We're experts in designing with timber, but we also know that it has lots of benefits. And this roof is actually one of the largest, or if not the largest, glulam and CLT roof in Europe. And it spans over the collaborative spaces and also over the office spaces in the building. The use of timber, we know, also promotes well-being, and we've been part of Trotter Research for a long time, and they've produced new evidence to help support this. So if you're trying to convince any clients of using timber in their buildings, there is now evidence of how it promotes good health and well-being. So the building as well, I would say, using timber, even though for this project, from the date of its commission, it didn't have net zero targets. But if you were building it today, timber would certainly contribute to lowering the embodied carbon of the building. And we use it both on the roof, but also in the walls of the building. They're actually constructed what they call a mega panel, which are CLT vertical panels, which then have the cladding attached to that. And it's all very precisely engineered, fire engineered, et cetera. And timber, you know, there's a timber handrail that goes all the way through the building, you know, recognizing that timber has a lovely touch quality, and it's a kind of used very effectively in terms of the interiors. Another issue I wanted to, or a method that is wanted to talk about is how we tested scenarios. Obviously, there were lots of specialist spaces in the building, but I'm just going to focus again on the collaborative hub and the foyer and how we created these type of drawings. This building was highly visualized. We were working with the auto industry who are used to kind of immersive techniques for viewing automotive design. So very demanding in that way, but really a great opportunity for us to really immerse ourselves in visualizing the project. And this just shows one area where we're looking at the foyer and how it might be used for different events, which had a big impact on how we specified the lighting, the power, the audiovisual, all the furniture and equipment to kind of imagine these scenarios. And I'll show you the building in use as we get towards the end of the presentation and how this actually played out. And in other areas, you know, we're looking very closely at how the breakout spaces and suites of meeting rooms would be used, but also thinking again about the cultural side of things. And I said, you know, they have an annual egg race at JLR, and we had to make sure the furniture could be moved and cleared so that this space could facilitate that annual event that's really important to their culture. So just an idea of some of the quality of visualization we were preparing through the whole engagement process. And you know, these were really necessary for gaining approval with the leaders from Tata, JLR, the University Warwick Manufacturing Group, so that, you know, they could have faith and consensus that the design was going to be that of the quality that they demanded. And we looked at everything in detail and visualized all the furniture and equipment in these spaces. And planning for variety. I know in workplace design, this has, you know, become super important. And we weren't, the building isn't well certified, but definitely we were referencing different research from the World Green Building Council and from the WELL standard to kind of support design decisions and also make the case for it. If any of you have worked on university projects, you may have found that the building is designed and then the estates department might do a very matter-of-fact type fit out using you know, their supply chain to provide, you know, what seems, you know, perfectly fine and functional furniture. But quite often we've found that that's been disappointing. And then, you know, you get problems and people complaining that spaces don't work for them. So we engaged in a really detailed design of and selection of furniture and finishes. And actually, this was a joy to do with the auto designers, because that's their thing, looking at finishes and interiors for automotive design. So we had a really fun and creative process doing that with them. And we were able to produce a whole range of spaces, from open plan offices to breakout spaces for big groups or small conversations, and really have a kind of palette of materials with this big timber roof overarching, but keeping these cool sweeping white lines and then splashes of color on the furniture. That was, you know, we spent a lot of time coordinating all those finishes to give a really good, positive look and feel, and make particularly the collaborative hub an attractive place that people will want to come and get out of their 1970s cubicle and collaborate and meet with people. And also, fantastic design studios. And then we're only allowed to show a few images that are vetted by the partners here, because these are the kind of areas where there's more secrecy around what they do, but there's a high amount of precision detailing to make sure the floors are perfectly flat and free from vibration, and the lighting levels are absolutely perfect for the work they have to do in these spaces. And the last point I wanted to make was about measuring and learning. So the building's finished, and we are measuring the embodied carbon and the operational energy use. And we're continuing to do this with the client. I would say the building opened just before the COVID pandemic. So we've had a strange break where it's been empty for a while, but we've got very good relationship with the client, and we were able to do an initial post-occupancy evaluation before that lockdown happened, and I think we'll continue to do that with them. So it's really important for them and for us to learn how the building's performing and how it needs to adapt to changes, particularly post-COVID. And also we're looking at the kind of social value of the project. RLB were the project managers for this, and they've done a whole social value report looking at the wider benefits to the community that this building represents, so people can see that social return on investment. And just to finish, I'm just showing you a few shots of the building in use. And a lot of this was just before lockdown. I mean, sadly, Lord Bhattacharya passed away, but there was a fantastic banquet in that space, which we tested to see if it could function as a banquet in his honor. There's a lot of outreach that the partners and the university do with local schools and apprentices, and it's held was able to hold some fantastic events for them. We had the Prince of Wales opening the building shortly before lockdown, and people gathering around the balconies at all levels to enjoy that. And here's the Prince actually getting inside one of the design studios. So we're thrilled to see the building being flexible and adaptive for all these uses. And really keen to get back up there and do some more research with the partners and the university. So that ends my talk, and happy to field any questions in the panel discussion.